The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends, and thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week, we're going to talk about Austin FC's up and down week with a loss at Colorado and then a victory over Real Salt Lake. We'll also cover a few other pieces of Austin FC news. My name is Landon Cottom, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley, and I had the pleasure of, with all of you, watching an afternoon game on Saturday, which was a bit of an interesting experience. Getting on the train before lunchtime was odd. The daytime sunlight and temperature was a little odd, but we enjoyed having the game and being able to get home and have a normal life beyond it. And I know you had a little bit different experience with being in the sun on the east side of the stadium.
Yeah, man, it was leading up to the game. I kind of thought it was going to be rainy. And so I was more worried about the rain before and after the game because our seats would have been covered by the rain, and then kind of worried about the playing surface if it was raining. But it ended up being bright and sunny, and the sun on that east side was just oppressive, and it was just beating up on us the whole game. And I noticed some guys came and sat down next to us for about 30 seconds and then got up and left again. And I was like, I wonder where they're going after just sitting down. And I looked over to the supporter section, which is shaded the entire game, and it seemed to be filling up as the first half went on. So I think a lot of people got up and went over there because they saw that the sun wasn't shining on those folks.
Yeah, and it was a weird energy all game, which there was a lot of reasons for that. The Longhorns played right before because I watched the UT football game at Hop Squad, and then watched the end of the game walking over on my phone. There was ACL in town, and so while the supporter section was amazing, the rest of the stadium was a little bit off or a little bit odd. Now, I don't know if it was just daytime or a lack of booze or what, but did you notice that too?
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit of all those things. I noticed just sitting around us, there was a lot of people I didn't recognize. So I think, I think ACL probably took some folks out. Just being during the day and being not sure what the weather's going to look like, maybe took some folks out. And then just it being so hot on that east side, it seemed, like you said, the supporter section was still rocking, but maybe the energy was a bit more subdued in other parts of the stadium. That being said, we're speaking relatively here compared to other Austin FC games, compared to, 90% of the rest of the league. This was still a way better atmosphere than what you're going to see. So not criticizing by any means, just noticing that it was a little bit down in a lot of the stadium.
Yeah, I think one of the moments that you talked about was you went back and watched the broadcast today did you watch the Spanish language broadcast?
Yeah.
Is that right? And sort of the way they describe the game. So you want to share that?
Yeah. So in the, one of my, I guess pet peeves with broadcasts sometimes is the way they mix in the audio to the broadcast, because for the first 20 minutes or so, they had crowd mics turned up and you could still hear the supporter section really well and hear all the chants and the drums. And then about 20 minutes on, it was like a switch got flipped and they went to a different set of mics or put a filter on that mic or something. And it just sounded really weird, unnatural and quiet for the rest of the game. And so the announcers, who they could still hear everything, and they kept commenting on how great the atmosphere was. Oh, the fans are amazing, blah, 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 blah. But then they weren't mixing that sound into the broadcast anymore. And so it felt a little bit strange, but there's one moment that I just saw a clip of this floating around on Twitter was it the English language Twitter broadcast for 2-day inning?
Yeah.
Was that who it was?
Yes, it's the English language broadcast when Cuervos is on and everybody gets down and they're like, oh, I guess the Austin FC fans are taking a break. And then people started going nuts and just throwing stuff in the air. And then they just admitted they had no idea what they were talking about.
I guess they're taking a break. Yeah, the Spanish language guys handled that better because it's the same feed, right? The same camera feed is going on. And they're showing that, and they're commenting on how everyone squatted down, but nobody sat down all the way yet. Nobody sat down. And then in that moment in the song where everyone just goes crazy, this one guy's like, que fiesta. And it's oh, he loved it. It makes me happy.
Yeah, I love that too. So, and that was so that was the game. That was Saturday's game, but we've got another game this week on Thursday. The national team is going to play at Q2 Stadium, and I believe that we both have tickets to that. And it'd be interesting. Like you talked about the atmosphere that everybody talks about that. I think you have an opinion on how maybe the national team atmosphere is different from an Austin FC atmosphere, and like expectations should be different about that.
Yeah, I mean, you keep hearing this on like the ESPN broadcast, whatever, Fox broadcast, whoever it is, they mention this USMNT game coming and saying like, oh, the atmosphere is going to be crazy there, which it's a sold out game. It's going to be good, but it is going to be very different to an Austin FC game. If for nothing else, just the chants are very different. Like the energy and like the vibe that the Murga brings with that music that they're playing and those chants that they're leading is very different from what the American Outlaws do at a national team game.
And very different.
In my
very
personal
different. What way,
opinion.
Landon? I feel like I feel like you have a significant opinion on this that you need to share.
I do not like the American Outlaws chants like at all. Like none of them. I don't like them. And so I think some other people, I know a lot of people who still really are really into that and will be down there jumping and singing with it all. And I just don't care. And so maybe my opinion is a little bit biased, but I much prefer the atmosphere at an Austin FC game to that of a national team game. And so, but even if you do like it, it is just a very different thing. The songs are different, but also a lot of people who make that atmosphere for the Murga at Austin FC games aren't USA fans, or like maybe they would be, but aren't going to be going to this game, and because the songs are different and it's not their band leading everything, and so it's just going to be a very different thing. But it is a sold out game. I think the crowd will be there as long as getting there early for that early kickoff doesn't affect anything. But I am very much looking forward to it because, I've been to a Gold Cup game over the summer for Qatar, and then I saw a friendly against Chile in Houston a few years ago, and that's the only USA action I've ever seen. So I am excited for the game.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. The only USA action I've ever seen was friendly. It was the friendly in San Antonio where Jordan Morris was. I think he was still in college, right? And he scored twice, and it was like the Dos a Cero game in the Alamo Dome, and it was the worst field ever laid down in the world because they laid grass on top of that turf, and it just slid up in chunks every time anybody made a tackle, which was kind of a mess. So, but still, I mean, it should be a good night on Thursday. I'm going to go with some friends of mine who I've known. It's kind of the guys that helped get me into soccer, and they lived in San Antonio, and I haven't seen them in probably 5 years. But when the announcement came out that the national team was going to play like a meaningful game at Q2, we all decided that was what we needed to go do and see. So I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, I'm not expecting the same environment that you get out of an Austin FC match.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into Austin FC's crazy week. So Austin had a game on Sunday, and then a game on Wednesday, and another game Saturday afternoon, which is like 3-game weeks happen, but this is a kind of congestion that we've not seen, and I don't think many teams ever really see, is in 3 games in essentially like 6.5 days or something like that, which it was a lot. But so Austin won that game on Sunday. Wolff mentions several times during a couple of press conferences that they're going to need to rotate with so many games coming up. And I don't know that any of us knew exactly what he meant by that. I guess he maybe tried to warn us without telling everything. But during the day on Wednesday, the day of the Colorado game, Jorge Iturralde tweets out that he had found out that Driussi, Djitte, and Fagundes did not travel with the team and were not in Colorado. Whenever the lineups came out, we found out that Kolmanic also did not travel with the team. And so we knew that it was going to be a very different lineup to the previous game. And then it came out, and the list of names was just bizarre. I think there were 4 or 5 people on there that were wingers, really. And just like we were sitting there trying to piece together, like, what is this lineup going to look like? and we settled on something and like pretty confident. I was like, I think this looks good. And so I tweeted out from the Moon Tower account, and then the lineups came out and we pretty much nailed it, right? Like I think we got Perez and Jimenez switched. And so they were both at wing back, but we got them on the wrong side. And other than that, we got it pretty much exactly right.
Yeah, we did. So we were at the Los Verdes watch party at Central Machine Works with like a little group of people that were all like really into, just like into the tactics of it all. And I think everybody an hour before the game when that lineup came out, just we were all like staring at our phones and trying to figure out like exactly what Josh Wolff had done. And it leads me back to the discussion we had last week when we bragged upon the fact that we had so much depth, we would not have to worry about seeing Manny Perez in the starting lineup again, which is something that lasted for 2 days for us, 1 day in soccer time, between like recording and release. And there he was. But like you said, Josh talked about rotation, and maybe we should have expected that in Colorado. So we ended up, I think it was 7 changes to our lineup, and Colorado rotated 2. Just not quite as much.
And they're not as heavily as us, but they did rotate pretty heavily. I would say probably 4 or 5 guys that weren't regular starters played for them. And
they're a little bit deeper than us also because they're an established team and they weren't dealing with any injuries or anything. But it was the lineup was interesting and the formation was interesting. Yeah, it was a little bit of the on the road against FC Dallas kind of style, right? Where we just wanted to bunker and pray for the best. How would you describe the way we lined up and played?
Yeah, no, that's what it was. I think at halftime, the possession, Colorado had over 60% of the possession at halftime. So I think that's an accurate representation there. So let's go ahead and get into the game. So like you said, we're sitting pretty deep and trying to just launch balls up to Gaines up top, which it almost kind of worked a few times, but it never looked super dangerous, really. I think the first real moment of note was the 35th minute, where Mackenzie Gaines breaks free, as he did a few different times. And he's approaching the box, looks like he's going to be in one-on-one on William Yarbrough, the keeper. And Lawless Abubakar runs up behind him with an arm outstretched and just like gives him a shove in the back as he's about to wind up to shoot, and he goes down. And I mean, in the moment, I thought it was a penalty. And then after watching the replay a few times, I'm even more positive it was a penalty. Or at the very least, a foul. Like how did you see that one?
Yeah, I felt like it was to me, it was a clear penalty because he's the last guy in the line between Gaines and the goal, and he made a very active move to deny him out of that. And so it really felt like a penalty. And the weirdest thing is like they didn't even go to VAR, right? That was
right.
The most frustrating part out of all of it. And I think Josh talked about this in the midweek. That's when it was like Claudio got a text from Howard Webb apologizing or something, and it was about that one, right?
Said a phone call. Yeah, the head of MLS's officials, Howard Webb, called Claudio and essentially apologized for getting this one wrong. But I think at the very least, like there's maybe an argument of it being outside the box, but I think it carries into the box. And so, but I think at like the very least, it's a foul on the edge of the box, but probably should have been a foul on the edge of the box with a red for denial of goal scoring opportunity for Abubakar. But I think the right outcome probably should have been a penalty with a red for denial of goal scoring opportunity for Abubakar. I don't know. I don't get it. But apparently like Howard Webb knows it wasn't right and let Claudio know, but that doesn't give us a penalty retroactively. So I don't know how much that helps.
Yeah, those after the fact apologies never really mean all that much. So from there, while we waited on pizza for like 2 hours at Central Machine Works, which I believe the roof of my mouth is still burned from that pizza, which was both very good but very hot when it finally came. It didn't look like anything was going to happen, and then right at the believe it was after the 45th minute, things started to go wrong for Austin.
Yeah. So we had the penalty call not get given. And then a little bit after that, it seemed like Austin players were getting frustrated there. Nick Lima fouls. I can't remember who it was on the sideline. And it was a foul, but he got mad that it was a foul on the sideline and kicks the ad board on the side and gets a yellow card. And so I think all the Austin players were just a little bit frustrated. And then I think Pochettino maybe gives the ball away. I'm not sure if it was the same play, but I'm pretty sure it was. That he gives the ball away. Colorado is moving the ball back towards their goal, and somehow Jack Price ends up completely unmarked in the box with the ball. Nobody near him. Nobody really trying to get near him, and he crosses the ball into Jonathan Lewis, who also is not really marked. Not really anybody putting any pressure on him. He heads the ball terribly, and. I don't think if it was just his header, I don't think it would have even been on target, but it bounces off of Nick Lima's chest and then bounces off of his leg and into the goal. And so it was a pretty shambolic chain of events there that led to that goal. I don't know how much blame to put on Lima there. I feel like he could have done a little bit better to maybe react and deflect it back towards Tarbell for him to collect it. But in any case, I think there's several other moments that somebody could have been a bit more focused, put in a little bit more effort in to stop that play from happening right there before halftime.
Yeah, and that's where I feel like they were just waiting for halftime to come and weren't, and just like they had all checked out and were hoping to like get to the half at 0-0 and then adjust from there, and they were punished for that.
So going into the half, I had gone to hunt for our pizza that still had not come 2 hours after we ordered it. And I was before I even got back to my seat after the second half kicks off, Colorado scores again. This time it's Andrew Tarbell has the ball in his box. He'd kind of gone out wide, and I guess it was Nick Lima that had played. Lima kind of played it back into the box toward him. And he was trying to get the ball deeper to, I don't remember if it was Jimenez or Pereira, but they were not open. He hits the ball pretty weakly, not accurately, to where Pereira didn't even get a chance to fight for the ball. And Mesquita picks it off, takes one touch, and curls it around Tarbell for their second goal. And that's, literally right after halftime. Watching it back, I wasn't sure if Tarbell could have maybe gotten back into the goal mouth and maybe gotten a chance at saving it. But I don't think he could have, but in any case, he's definitely at fault for putting it on a platter for Mesquita there to finish off the easy goal.
Yeah. I just remembered, so I think Dallas Teston was there for the second half of the game. And he said, well, when we got to 45, he was going to be 0-0. And he's like decided to drive to Central Machine Works. And then by the time, like 17 minutes later, when he got there, including halftime, like it was 2-0 because it was like Colorado scored in the first minute going into the break, and then like in the first minute out of it. So it was like 2 total minutes of soccer time before things went all to heck. So then I guess Cecilio subbed in for Manny Perez right after halftime at 46. Did not change the formation. Like what happened there?
They moved Jared Stroud to the wing back. So they kind of stayed in that 5-2-3, but Stroud was pushing up a little higher and kept someone who's not a defender at right wing back, which I think Stroud is fairly well equipped to do that. But at that point we were essentially 2-0 down, and probably a 5-2-3 wasn't going to cut it at that point. Wasn't anyway.
The way to go. Yes. Then at 57, we did have a formation change, right? When Cascante came in for Romagna, did we go back into a more traditional lineup, or did we stay the way that we were?
I'm honestly not sure. I watched most of the first half just to get a good idea, like watched it a second time, but I did not really watch much of the end of the game again after that last goal was scored. So honestly, I'm not sure.
Because you don't hate yourself and you didn't want to do that to yourself again. Well, regardless, right after that, Cascante factored into the third goal of the match.
Yeah, Jack Price, who I mentioned earlier, he's one of the most dangerous crossers of the ball in MLS. He's got 1 million assists from set pieces and from corners, and that's why I was so upset that he was so wide open for that first goal. And he hits the corner. Austin Trusty, big center back, goes up and just beats Cascante in the box to win a header and puts it in for that third goal and kind of puts that final nail in the coffin. But I feel like this has happened several times with both Cascante and Romagna, where they're in the right spot and just don't win a header. And I don't really know enough about what you're supposed to do in those moments to understand what they're doing wrong. But it seems like it's happened several times. And like we talked about this on the last show. We haven't given up that many set piece goals this season, but a lot of them seem to be against the defenders you would seemingly most want to be in those positions, right? Like our two biggest players, you would want them in those situations, and they seem to be the ones who get beat in those situations.
Yeah, that's really bad. And then the other part of that is like we never score on set pieces. So it's like if you're just watching it, comparatively speaking, you would think we give up a ton, but the other part of that is that we do not convert set pieces at all. And so once that was 3-0, I think we made a couple subs, but that was kind of the end of it for Austin FC. There was like not a lot of hope. Yeah, they were gonna, and plus Colorado's such a defensive team. Like once we gave up the second goal, it was fairly unlikely we're going to come back because that's their strength.
They were set up pretty defensively as well. So I don't think we're ever going to win that game. And like you could say that the penalty could have changed the momentum of the game. There was John Gallagher had a chance early on where Gaines put him through 1-on-1 with Yarborough, the keeper, and he kind of hesitates, and Yarborough just attacks really aggressively and slides outside the box and kicks it away. If one of those comes off, maybe it changes the momentum of the game. But that team in that formation on that night, I don't think they were ever going to win that game, even if we did win that penalty.
So let's talk about Mackenzie Gaines now. There was that we had sort of shown some doubt that Mackenzie Gaines was the answer at striker, which Chris Bills from the Striker Texas called us out on last week after the show. So what did you feel like you saw out of him? Like, are you more or less convinced that he can be a striker solution? How do you feel coming out of the Wednesday match?
I am still not entirely convinced that he is a great option at striker. He is so fast that I do want to keep him around next season and just like have that weapon available. Honestly, I'd like to give him a try out on the wing because I think he might be a little bit more dangerous and useful there. But yeah, like as a guy to bring on late to stretch that back line to launch some balls to, great, I like it. But I still haven't seen enough to think that he's the guy that we can play for 70 minutes here and there and actually really get a lot out of it. And he's not terrible. I don't think he's bad at all, but I just think he kind of lacks that technique and that finishing ability that definitely Djitte has, and probably even Cecilio has in certain moments, that I'd rather have either of those guys play there for like long stretches of time. But again, he is so fast. And Chris Bills has mentioned this before, but I think if you take like top running speed within a game, he's up there among like not just MLS players, not SNFC players, but like world football. Like he is among the fastest players in the world, like in game speed. And so that weapon alone, if he's decently technical with the ball. We've seen that finish against who did we play last weekend?
LA.
Against LA last week. He's got that finishing moment, but there's some a couple of times this week when he was one-on-one with the keeper and didn't really have a very convincing shot in those moments that I still don't think I'm I'm super convinced that he can carry this team for longer stretches as a striker.
Well, and another player that I want to talk about. So I guess Cecilio played 20 something minutes in this, which made him the only Austin FC player to play in every match because Brad Stuver did not start this match. And I'm still not sold on the reason why he didn't start. But let's talk a little bit about Andrew Tarbell and what we saw out of him and what we didn't for a guy that we thought was going to be the starter for Austin FC going into the season.
Yeah, so I think he's just proved again that Brad Stuver deserves to be the starting goalkeeper. Tarbell's, I mean, his shot stopping is still pretty good. I think he showed that even during this game, stopped some pretty dangerous shots, but distribution wise, he's just shown that he's nowhere near on Stuver's level. And maybe with some games, like a string of games to build his confidence, he would look better in that. But yeah, he's made mistakes here. I guess we've really only seen him since preseason. We've seen him in this game and in the Tigres game, and his distribution was not great in either of these. And he gave up this goal because of it against Colorado on Wednesday.
Yeah, when we interviewed Stuver 8 months ago or whatever now, he talked a lot about the role of the keeper, the attack, right? And he talked a lot about distribution and decision making and like going short and going long. And for me, like I don't, I always think about keepers' jobs being stopping the ball. Like that seemed like an odd set of things for him to talk about. But now that I've seen this in practice and seen it in action, it makes a lot of sense in terms of this system that's primarily what you wanted to see out of him. And so like not only is Tarbell, maybe not better as a shot stopper, but he's also like not better in those other situations.
So looking at this lineup, I mean, I think I'm a person who is a bit more forgiving for like these types of rotations and like resting players when they need it, especially in this circumstance where we're not going to make the playoffs. We've got these new guys on the team who are still kind of building up fitness. And I've talked to a lot of people about how I wasn't as upset about the rotations in that first Dallas match. And so I'm probably a little less upset about leaving these guys at home for this game. But looking at the formation and kind of the tactics rolled out in this game, I didn't like that at all. I don't know. I feel like the goal was to hold on to the game for 60 minutes, bring on Cecilio and try to steal a goal. But we saw that not work against Dallas that first time. We are also playing a very weak lineup. And so if we're going to play a weak lineup, I'd almost rather see them just like set up in a 4-3-3 and play guys in their positions and see what happens.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So I mean, and Josh apologized. He's like, yeah, Josh said it was like, this is on me a lot in the post-game press conference. And at first I couldn't figure out even like exactly what he was talking about. Like, was he talking about who he left at home? Was he talking about the formation? And like, eventually it was just both. Like it was all of it. And I think what it came down to was just the amount of change that everybody was willing to absorb. And just, you could do one or you can do the other, but to like compound those where people are playing in positions they don't really understand that much, with all that rotation was just like too much for one team to absorb. And maybe it wouldn't have mattered. Like maybe, I mean, Colorado was, they were third in the West going in, and maybe rolling Freddie Kleeman out and giving his best efforts, like maybe you don't get the best result you can, but you learn a little bit about your team too. Like, I don't know how to process what came out of that game because there were so many different things that were changed. Like, I can't say, oh, we suck at this formation or these guys aren't very good. Right. It's just like, that was a mess. And that's all I can interpret that game to be.
And if you're going to go out and bunker, like, is having Manny Perez at right wing back the best way to go about that part of the game plan? Like, again, if you're going to do the bunker, put Kleeman in. He's a real center back. Maybe he clearly hasn't impressed Wolff in practice because he's not getting minutes. But but put him in at center back, put Lima at the wing back because he knows that position and can play it, and just play some guys and give them a chance to succeed in this different setup. But yeah, because I think the bunkering, holding on for 60 minutes and trying to steal a goal, that MLS teams have been doing that for ages. Like that's what you do on the road sometimes. It's just like try to survive. And so I'm not criticizing that, but then trying to do that with the lineup that he rolled out, it was just never going to work.
Yeah, at least you'll learn about their long-term potential, right? Because we're playing for next year or down the road at this point. We don't know what everybody's contract situation is or anything, but you have to find out about your players, like what they have to offer to you in the future.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to come back and talk about some of just kind of some of the fallout from this game, and then how that led into Saturday's game, and how we think those things affected each other. So we'll take a quick break and we will be right back. When no one is around. Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education.
You can go to fvf.law to find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's fvf.law.
Hey, Landon, let's talk about hot sauce.
Let's do it.
Teardrop Pepper Company has finally created the perfect recipe for hot sauce right here in Austin, Texas. Their all-natural, award-winning hot sauce has a delicious blend of flavor and heat, enhancing your favorite foods and leaving you wanting more.
Whether you like the zesty kick of Golden Habanero or the garlicky smoothness of Supreme Serrano, it's the best way to spice up your Austin FC pre-match meals. Teardrop Pepper Company has 2 unique flavors available, and you can order them from their website, teardroppepperco.com, or from their social media pages.
And when you have a game on Saturday afternoon, you can have Teardrop for both your pregame meal, postgame meal, and maybe like a late night taco snack after you go out afterwards. So go to teardroppepperco.com, use the offer code GOAL, GOAL, to save 10% off your order. Put it on everything, they'll make more. All right, so we had a rough start to the week, and I don't know, based upon past experience, if we had a lot of confidence going into the RSL match on Saturday, but we were going to be back at home. We had the best possible lineup that we could have. Josh Wolff promised a very aggressive starting 11 in the midweek press conference. And how did you feel going into Saturday?
I mean, with the lineup, I knew we were going to be able to start a very strong lineup just because of all the players that had been rested. Ring missed the last weekend game with the red card, so even though he played a lot in the midweek game, he'd still probably be good to go without a game on the back end of this one. So as far as lineup goes, I was feeling like we were going to definitely see a good lineup. But as far as like the tone, like the mood around the team, I was thinking like Josh Wolff better win this game if he wants to prevent a mob from coming after him.
Yeah, and I think we can get into this, but during the press conference, during the midweek and during the Wednesday post match and the one in between the matches, Josh is very much like, I apologize, and then I feel like when it turned out okay, he's like, oh wait, actually I was strategic and never mind. I meant all that. It was totally on purpose. And so he also kind of got into we mentioned this, like Jorge Iturralde talking about who was left home and who flew for Denver. Like, do you think that was fair? Like from Josh?
I mean, yeah, I don't. It was like a very offhand comment, right? Like, I don't. Like it was in response to a question, and it did, like, he said it in a critical tone though. Like he didn't like go after Jorge and was like cussing him out or anything, but he did make an offhand comment that seemed critical of the fact that Jorge released that information, which I think that's like that's not fair at all. Like, if he was being critical there, like, if a journalist finds out that information, he's well within his rights to report that. And so, yeah, if he doesn't want that stuff being found out, then it came from within the team somewhere, right? So that's on the team.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I feel like criticism doesn't go over all that well.
I will say though, like, I saw some pretty unrealistic comments on social media regarding this whole topic of people like being mad that they weren't told that those players weren't going to travel beforehand. And anything regarding like a lineup, a roster, that's going to be kept secret until the very last moment, because there is a slight competitive advantage to the other team not knowing who you're going to put on the field. And so do you feel the same way about that? Like, I think it's unreasonable to expect the team to like put out press releases saying like, oh, tonight we're not going to play Driussi because he's tired. It's like, no, well, okay, yeah. No, that's why both teams put out their lineups at the exact same time an hour before the game starts. Exactly, so they can't plan off of each other. And so by Wolff saying, yeah, we're leaving these guys at home, it's telling the other team, like, these guys aren't playing. They're not even going to be available. Plan around that as you will.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's not their job to tell people about it, for sure. But it's not, but also you can't criticize people for finding that out. But
right. Yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree. Like, it's not their responsibility to make sure everybody knows everything about the club. Right. I mean, that would be foolish, but I mean, coming into this game, I mean, we'll see how it went. So what we're looking at is, I think considering that we were playing the Galaxy, the Rapids, and RSL, that getting 6 out of 9 points from that week would make, I think I said this on Twitter, that would make this be like the best week in the history of Austin FC, considering the opponents that we would come out that way. So and we came into that like with that hope, and it turned out to come to be.
Yeah. So talking about the strong lineup we were expecting to see, it ended up being arguably the strongest lineup you could put out. I think you could argue Lima for Jimenez. I think they both add different things to the lineup, but it ended up being Stuver in goal, Kolmanic at left back, Romagna, Cascante in the middle, Jimenez right back, Ring and Pochettino in central midfield, and then Dominguez, Driussi, Fagundes across the attacking midfield line, and then Djitte up top. And so, very strong lineup coming out. And then Austin looked good, like right off the bat, right? I think there's maybe some sloppy play, like they were moving the ball well, getting into dangerous positions, and I think several times like they would have like momentum killed by a bit of sloppy play, but it ended up coming good in the 17th minute with Cecilio Dominguez's first goal. It was like Djitte had the ball in the box and bounced it off of the same defender, I think like 3 different times. He tried to like do a little first time flick into the box as he received it, and it bounced off the defender, and then tried to play a pass 2 times and bounced off the same defender, and ends up spilling over to Driussi, who hits a really hard shot right at the keeper. Keeper spills it, and it falls to Cecilio on the backside, who puts it in. And if you watch, we'll get into more of Cecilio's performance later on, but if you watch Cecilio during this goal, he starts about, 45 yards from goal and slowly jogs towards the back post the entire time the play is going on, and never really changes speed or anything. And then as he gets closer, the ball just falls to him and he finishes it.
He's like, hey, there's a ball. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, before we get more into this, Cecilio had different hair than he had.
Oh, he did. Yeah.
So did we ever see Cecilio's braids like out in the wild? Because he had this, like, I feel like he had that like very intricately braided like Cancun spring break hair, pulled back, and then like I feel like he went back to his just like standard like pulled back hair in this match.
He still had the braids in Colorado, and there were some better shots of it.
Okay,
so I got a better look at what was going on in the Colorado game, and my opinion is slightly higher. I was in I don't know. We don't need to talk about hair again. Anyway, I retract my negative statements about his hair from last weekend. I liked the braids a little bit better than I thought I did after I got a good close up of it, but I prefer the wild like big curly hair that he was rocking against RSL.
Okay, and so we're going more back toward that then when we see that. So then I mean the rest of the first half, like I felt like, I don't know if the numbers really necessarily show that, but I feel like we're in pretty good shape.
I think shots wise, the numbers definitely did. I think when the half was over, we had 52% possession and had total shots was 7-3 at the half. So I think overall the numbers were in our favor, and I think the game felt that way as well. Like it felt like we should have been winning it.
Yeah, I agree with that. That was this was a game where the stats and the like just watching the game from where I was like seemed to line up. Sometimes that doesn't always happen, but I felt like we were on the front foot for that whole half, and just by sort of a little bit of lack of luck. And Josh talked about maybe that it should have been 5 or 6 to 1. I'm not sure I agree with that, but felt like we were the better team in the first half. We were the better team all throughout.
Yeah. So going into half, I think somebody had gone down with like a cramp or something early on, and then Ring actually like pretty early on, we were moving the ball around the back, and Jimenez was out on the right and had Ring in a lot of space in the middle, but played it behind him, and it ends up being kind of a hospital ball, and he has a pretty heavy collision with, I think Anderson Julio was the RSL player that he went up against, but he wins the ball and is able to get it to an Austin player again, but he took a really big hit, and as he got up, he was grabbing his arm and like was not interested in having the ball played to him, was not even paying attention really for several seconds. And I was worried that at half he was maybe not going to come back out, but halftime happens, same team comes back out. And in the, I guess 55th minute is when Austin's second goal comes. And this goal was really, really nice overall, really. Djitte had dropped deep to aid in the buildup. He receives the ball, plays it out wide to Driussi. I did not appreciate the quality of this pass in real time. It happened on the far end of the field from where I was sitting. But upon the replay of this pass was amazing from Driussi. So Djitte plays it to him. He hits it first time with the outside of his boot, chips it over the top of the back line, probably 25, 30 yards, right into Diego's stride. Diego takes it, drives at goal, takes a really quick look across, sees that Cecilio is running by himself on the far side, and he hits the ball really hard, which I think he needed to get it past the defender and then also past Ochoa, the keeper, and hits it like a little bit in front of Cecilio, like maybe dangerously ahead of Cecilio, but I think it's really the only place he could have put it in the moment. And luckily Cecilio was able to get enough speed up and kind of dive to like slid in to get a foot on the ball and put it in. But the pass by Driussi was amazing, but I think I kind of underappreciated the finish by Cecilio as well, because he really did have to like take a few pretty heavy steps to get to it and then slide in to get a foot on the ball to put it in the back of the net there.
Yeah, and I thought the same thing, because I thought watching it in real time, Cecilio never looks that fast, and I don't know if it's because he's a bigger guy, like he doesn't seem like that's not the way he moves, but when they came off Dominguez's foot, like I didn't think he was going to catch it. Like I thought that was going to be one of those that just like slides out wide.
Yeah. And
I couldn't see. So like, I don't know if he just like finally put it in extra gear or what, but I was surprised that he put it behind him. And then so Driussi, I wanted to talk about this because this is something we mentioned before, is the hockey assist. Like, what is a hockey assist in soccer terms?
So it really only exists in MLS in soccer terms. So in hockey, in certain situations, like you get an assist if you're the one, like an assist, like in other sports, is the guy who plays the pass that leads to the goal. That's the assist. In hockey, the guy who plays the pass before that will also get an assist in certain circumstances. Also in MLS, the guy who plays the ball before will also sometimes get an assist. And I don't quite know the rules. I think it's like essentially the pass needs to help lead to the goal. And so in this case, where like Driussi's pass essentially does create the goal, and then Diego plays it to him, Driussi will get, I believe in MLS, it's the technical term is a secondary assist. But Driussi will get an assist there as well. But if you look at like the Premier League, they don't count that stat. Like they won't register that.
It's just a person who played the ball that led to the goal specifically, right? There's not.
Correct.
It's not a secondary, right? Well, yeah, that's a beautiful connecting play. And today, believe MLS announced that is, well, I don't know if it was MLS. I think it was just the website. That was like the pass of the week, was the first ball that Driussi played on that goal.
Well deserved for sure.
For sure. And then I thought we were cruising to victory, and in true Austin FC fashion, RSL gets one back.
Yeah, so they were. I think it was still pretty even at that point, and it's around the 64th minute. So Diego Rubio had come on not long before that at striker for RSL, and he kind of was making a run to the box and checked back, and Albert Rusnak had the ball wide right and spotted that and plays a really good ball into him. Cascante was the one marking him, and as he noticed that Rubio had checked that run, he slips and falls down. As the ball goes across Romagna's face and Rubio receives it, Romagna just, again, we've seen him do this before, his field of vision just follows the ball across, and he completely ignores Damir Kreilach, who he had been tracking. Kreilach runs in behind him. Rubio one touch passes it to Kreilach in behind the back line, and Kreilach finishes it. So Romagna has been doing a lot of things a lot better than he had been doing, but this is still the biggest flaw in his game, where he just shuts off and loses that focus sometimes and ball watches. And so if he would have just taken an extra step and maybe stepped across Kreilach and anticipated that run, or put a little bit of pressure on him, maybe he could have tipped that pass away or something. But he just was watching the ball and completely forgets Damir Kreilach exists, and Rubio does a really nice one-time pass in behind, and Kreilach's always going to finish that ball from there.
Yes, that was his 12th goal in the season, I think. We talked about him being sort of the most dangerous threat that they have in offense, and so he lived up to that. And we didn't have another goal for the rest of the match, but we thought we were going to get one on the Djitte penalty. So this is at 77. So like it was called a penalty kick on the field, right? And then
Correct.
Called back via VAR.
Correct. Yeah, they gave the penalty immediately and then looked at VAR and called it off.
And I thought it was a penalty in the moment, and then I was shocked that there was like clear and present evidence or whatever that there's supposed to be to overturn the penalty on that, especially given that it was taken. Like, how did you feel about that?
In the moment, I couldn't tell well enough. And then whenever it's a VAR decision, they don't show the replay in the stadium. They stop showing replays at that point, and so I didn't get to see it then. And then on social media, I saw like some freeze frames where you can see the defender behind him essentially has a whole hand around Djitte's arm.
Well, because it takes like both your hands, right? Like
Yeah.
at full stretch to get around like one of Djitte's arms. So I get that. Yeah.
Yeah, and in that freeze frame, it looks like he's like dragging him back as hard as he can. upon watching the replay of the game, he does grab the arm and gives a little bit of a tug, but it's not as dramatic as I thought it was from that freeze frame. Honestly, like looking back at it, I don't know if it should have been a penalty, but I also don't know that there's like a clear and obvious error to overturn it there either.
Yeah, I guess that's what it came down to. So it was called a penalty on the field in the moment. Like, it didn't seem like there was enough to overturn it.
I definitely less egregious than the Mackenzie Gaines one in Colorado.
Yeah, which, I mean, I guess luckily neither one of those calls or lacks of calls like changed the outcome of either game, because we weren't winning that game at Colorado, and we ended up winning the game at home. But it made for an interesting. I mean, it made for a nervy last 20 minutes, but honestly,
RSL picked up momentum after that goal too. They started looking a lot more dangerous for a stretch after that. But yeah, there's several. You talk about Wolff saying that it, like hinting that he thinks it could have been like 4 or 5. I don't think he's too far off. I mean, if we get that penalty, we'll say that's one. And then there was a couple of other moments that David Ochoa, their keeper, had a really good game. He was really good. And there's specifically like a little flick by Ring right inside the box that Ochoa gets a finger to and is able to tip it wide. And a couple of other moments where Ochoa is just really quick to react to some dangerous moments and cut stuff out. So I think if against a lower quality keeper, and if we get that penalty, I think it easily is 4-1.
Yeah, one more moment before we forgot, because it's going to be directly influential upon the next game, I think. So Danny Pereira gets a yellow card at 90+2, which I believe is his 5th now, because he had 4. Then he took one. Wait, he had 4. He took one back for like going 8 games in a row without a yellow.
Yeah, for good
then
behavior, essentially.
Good behavior. Then he got another one. And I think it's only been like 2 or 3 games since he got that. So I believe that the one he picked up in extra time is his 5th yellow, and he'll have to miss the next match. I haven't seen that, but does that sound right?
I think so. Yeah, that they were saying that on the Spanish language broadcast that he would. And I hadn't thought about that until that point, but it was a little bit like it was necessary. I think the foul was a good idea, but he had an opportunity a few seconds before to make that professional foul in a manner that probably wouldn't have gotten him a yellow. And then he ends up having to chase a guy down and throw him down because we're just not going to risk a breakaway at that point in time.
Especially where we're at that point in time, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
being up 2-1 late in the game, like, foul the guy. But he had an opportunity to do it a few seconds before and didn't take it. And so then he had to take that yellow when maybe he could have gotten away with just a foul.
Yeah, so we see that out. You talked about Alex Ring. Like, I feel like this was one of his best games. Like, where he
Alex
played.
Ring was
where he played. Yeah, where he cut plays off, especially the first half. Like, it was amazing.
Yeah, it was more of like a early in the season Alex Ring, which we talk about Alex Ring like looking like bad tempered on the field, like just looks like kind of like he's growling all the time, like kind of a grumpy player. And now I'm just imagining like every time he has to go back and clean up a mess and like make a last ditch tackle to save us from a breakaway, all I can think of is Alex Ring thinking like, I should be playing at the 8. Like, I should be playing further forward, not doing all this crap and saving this team over and over. But he's very good at saving this team over and over, and had a lot of like really clever, really good little tackles in the perfect moment to save Austin from some really dangerous moments from RSL.
Yeah, I think of him like my wife when she walks around the house and picks up after my kids. She's just like, I shouldn't have to do this, but I'm going to do it because this is my job, and like I'm the best person at it. I think that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, he was really good. I think Driussi is interesting because other than that pass, like I don't feel like he really stood out, but he's so good. Like I feel like it doesn't. You don't see him making that like working as hard as everybody else. I think we talked about that before too.
Yeah, I think he doesn't have to work as hard as everybody else because he's just, and I've said this before, he's an extremely intelligent player. Like he knows where to be, he knows when to be there. And so where someone else might have to take twice as many steps because they started to go one way and then adjusted and went the other way, Driussi just goes straight there and he knows where he's supposed to be. But during like the live watch, I thought he was pretty good. On the replay, I thought he was maybe one of the two best players on the field. And you would imagine, since Cecilio Dominguez won MLS Player of the Week and was on the MLS Team of the Week, I would say that Cecilio Dominguez was the best player on the field. But I actually think that Driussi and Diego were the best players on the field, probably.
So let's talk about why, given that outcome. So what did you see or not see from Cecilio that doesn't make you think he was one of the two best players on the field on Saturday?
I mean, he scores the 2 goals. I already said in the first one, like he essentially was just there when the ball fell to him and kicked it in. Did a little bit more work on the second goal, but Driussi and Diego did a lot of the work, most of the work on that one. And he just made that little sprint at the last second. And he, to his credit, he showed as much. Like he didn't really celebrate. He grabbed Diego and started pointing at Diego like, this is the guy that did it, which I appreciated about Cecilio. But I think I was a little bit harsh towards him on Twitter after the game when he won man of the match, and people were saying like, oh, this is Cecilio's best game for us. It's like, I don't think he was very good in the game, because early on, especially in the first half, he had several heavy touches, several misplaced passes. There was one time, this might have been in the second half, this was still in the first half. There was a long ball up the side and he was completely by himself, that he could have brought the ball down and launched a pretty dangerous attack by driving at goal there. And he takes a really heavy touch that almost goes out of bounds, and he has a sprint and like kind of jump to save it. And it just slows down that counterattack, where just because he had a heavy touch. And so there's several little moments like that, and those are the ones that stuck in my mind. But there are lots of moments also where we were able to either play it into Djitte and kind of switch play, or hit a diagonal ball across to Cecilio and get him one-on-one with one of those defenders. And he roasted guys a few times. And those moments didn't turn into goals, but I think those are the moments when Cecilio Dominguez really shines, is one-on-one with a guy at the edge of the box. And he showed why he's good at those things and how dangerous he can be in those moments. And so right after the game, after the live watch, I was like, I don't think Cecilio actually played that well. I take that back completely. I think he actually had a pretty good game, but on both of the goals, Djitte and Driussi are involved in both of them. And I don't think either of them happen without the good work that other players did that Cecilio kind of benefited from. And so, yeah, even though I don't think he was the best player in the field, he did have a pretty good game.
So do you feel like the Josh Wolff strategy for the whole week was vindicated by the win on Saturday?
Yeah, that's the question, right? Like, was he right? Like, what do you think? Do you think he's vindicated?
I think it's easy to say that based upon the results, like after the fact, but I think he should have taken a different approach this week.
Yeah, I won't go as far to say vindicated, but if I could change the word to like, this made it acceptable. I think that is the case. Like, people will be a bit more forgiving about it because of the fact that we've got 6 points out of 6.5 days, essentially, and 2 of probably the best performances we've seen from this team in the same week of the season. Those 2 things, I think, take the sting off of that Wednesday night a little bit. But yeah, again, he really needed to win this game, and he pulled it off and did it. So I think maybe he'll keep the Wolves No pun intended. Keep the Wolves away for another week.
Yeah, and so we're going to talk next week. We'll talk about this at length. But yeah, we talked about we mentioned when we were talking about the Colorado match that it was like too much rotation, and I think I'm clearly not an MLS head coach, so I'm not going to pretend to be this, but I would have played Stuver. I would have rolled at my best like 4-3-3 and give it the best effort and not like over rotated. I think in the first match, and I think especially we talked about this earlier, but in the press conference after the Wednesday match, he's like, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, blah blah blah, and over rotated. And then in the press conference after the match on Saturday, he's kind of dismissed all that. Like I feel like the Wednesday apologies were like giving himself cover in case they didn't turn out the way it did on Saturday. And then when they did on Saturday, he's like, oh, I totally meant that. Like that was
nailed it.
Nailed it. I was totally going to give up. Like I was giving up Wednesday to get 6 out of 9 for the week, which is a great week. And I just don't know if I buy that overall. We didn't get into this. We've talked about it a lot, but I mean, 3 games in 7 days is a lot. But for people that don't follow MLS regularly, we should probably just briefly mention like why that happened now and why we don't expect to see that happen in the future.
Yeah, I mean, so MLS's schedule in general is pretty compact, and with the weird COVID year and the weird CBA stuff happening at the beginning of this year, it was even more compact this season. But with we haven't really even mentioned this, but the new, what is it called? Leagues Cup? Is that what they're calling that tournament, Jeremiah?
Oh yeah, the Leagues Cup. Yeah, the new tournament. So that's true. I was thinking before this year, this would not happen again, but with them taking a month off for the Leagues Cup next year, maybe this would totally happen again next season.
That might actually not start till 23. I can't remember if that's the case or not. I think that starts in 2023. But in any case, we do expect the season to be a little less compact next year, and we'll see fewer of the weeks like we've had. Hopefully, I hope that's the case.
Yeah, and another interesting thing that we saw this week, which was this in the Matt Doyle article? Because one of the other things that everybody talked about, and this came up in the press conference, is like, is this the best of Austin FC? Like, was this the 11 we saw this Saturday and last Sunday? Like, which is what I was wanting to title the podcast. Like, are we actually good? Now that we have everybody, and I thought it was interesting the numbers that came up out of this in the, I guess it was like the Doyle's like highlights for the week or whatever. So do you want to go over those right quick?
Yeah, for sure. So the stats he mentions are essentially goals per 90 for and against Austin FC. And so over the course of the whole season, Austin scores 0.9 goals per 90, and they've conceded 1.4 goals per 90. And that's not very good over a season. With Sebastian Driussi on the field, they've scored 1.5 per 90 and have conceded 2 per 90. So a little bit better. With Driussi and Djitte on the field, they've scored 2.1 per 90 and have conceded 0.7. And so it's a small sample size. It's only a few games really worth of minutes with that in that, but 2.1 to 0.7, that's like an extremely good soccer team if you put up those numbers consistently. So again, small sample size, but I'm hoping that this is something to grab onto and something to build around into next season.
Yeah, that kind of ties back into the overall X goals out of the RSL match is like, which we haven't talked about a lot in a while, but our expected goals were 2.67 and RSLs were 0.96. So, it's probably the best number of the year as far as for a 90-minute full domination. So, maybe this it's kind of late in the year to make a rally, and we talked about that last week too. But it gives you a lot of hope for 2022, which we can talk about again when we talk about sort of the Wolff in, Wolff out thing next week. I think that what Wolff needs and what the Austin FC needs is for people to have some hope going into next season. The next season is going to be good. And between this week and those numbers, like there's reason to believe that that's a truth, that it's going to happen in 2022.
Yeah, and so you just mentioned this briefly, but let's take a moment to plug what next week's show is going to be. So Austin FC doesn't have another game until October 16th. There's World Cup qualifiers happening right now, so we have 2 weeks off essentially. So next week we're going to take the opportunity with the extra showtime. We're going to have Chris Wellhausen come on and have a little a little debate style show. It's going to be Wolff in, hashtag Wolff in versus hashtag Wolff out. We're going to try to keep it civilized and to keep rational arguments as the main tone of the show. But I think a lot of people will enjoy that one. So definitely tune in next week for that.
Yeah, and I think like as you listen to this one or think about it or whatever, like send us a note, tweet at us, DM us or whatever. I mean, we'd love to hear, we don't want to create arguments out of like take it out of the air, but like wherever you are, if you're Wolff in or Wolff out, like we'd love to know why you are that way and what you believe about it so that we can have like a realistic discussion about the future of the club.
Yeah, absolutely. One more thing that I think we should mention before we move on to some of this other news, and this one specifically came out of the post-game press conference in Colorado. Wolff was talking about Matt Besler, and I don't know if he meant to say this, but he was talking about like depth and rotation. And when talking about Besler, he says when he comes back, if he comes back. And I thought like that kind of perked my ears up, and I was like, wait, if he comes back? Like I thought that might be a reality, but it like Josh Wolff said it out loud. I don't know if he overstepped there or if that's something that's actually a reality right now, that Matt Besler might not play again this year.
Yeah, and I was especially surprised by that because I think it was Bills or somebody reported that earlier in the week he was like out on the field at training. Not that he was like training with the club, but he was doing like individual, and maybe they gave applause or whatever that he was like out on the field. So I mean, what do you see Matt Besler's future in Austin?
I don't know. I mean, like concussions are serious things. I mean, you saw Iko Para kind of do an early retirement this year because of a lot of concussion problems. I think concussions aside, Matt Besler seems to be physically on the decline. Just he's at that age that it's not a surprising thing to see. I think he would still bring value to the club if we kept him around for one more year, even if he's not playing as many minutes as he has this year. Just to have that kind of presence in the locker room, to have a guy with that much experience that someone like Romagna can kind of watch and learn from, definitely worth having around. But if we're depending on Matt Besler to play as many minutes, or even 3/4 of the minutes, half as many minutes as he's played this year, then I think something has gone horribly wrong. Because I think we need to start transitioning him out, and if that's the case, we need a more dependable center back to be able to play regularly than what we have currently.
Yeah, we're not going to find that solution in-house for sure. And then some people have talked about like, do you transition him into a role in our front office? And I just don't see that with the time and connections he has in Kansas City.
Yeah,
like, I assume he's going back to KC like as soon as he's done in Austin.
Yeah, if he's going to work in the front office, it's going to be in Kansas City for sure.
Yeah, well, let's talk about a few other things. We had our first, I believe, our first national team player call up, Jan Kolmanic.
Yeah,
call up the Slovenian national team.
We've got quite a few players who have call ups in their past, but not while they've played for Austin FC. So yeah, that's pretty exciting. And it's also Jan's first call up to the full Slovenian national team. Before he had played with like his age groups. I think he was late. Like after he signed, he like left and was late to reporting to camp because he was playing with the U21 team. But yeah, so really exciting. I'm not sure where he sits in their depth chart, but he's going to be on the bench and at the games for Slovenia's World Cup qualifying games.
Yeah. Do you think that means anything? Do you think in terms of, do we suddenly become more appealing to like Eastern European players or like parts of the world because that it is a path to the like your local national team that that wasn't there before? Or I mean, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I don't know for sure that it's going to have like a huge effect, but it's not hurting. I mean, like Kolmanic talked about it, like the way he talks about it is that he knew, like he looked at it as that kind of pathway from the very beginning. And I imagine his agent represents other people over there. He has his friends on the national team that he's going to be talking to, his old teammates that he'll be talking to. And there's a few other Slovenian players currently in the league, and a lot of other guys in the league from that part of the world who maybe aren't getting the same kind of attention from other European leagues, that they might start looking more and more to MLS as that pathway, as like South American, Latin American players have been doing for several years at this point. And so it might be this weird reverse path of coming from Europe to MLS so you can
go
back to Europe. So looking at the rest of the season, one of the main motivating factors and the things that we have to win or potentially win is like some pride within Texas, right? And so looking at Copa Tejas, I haven't looked at these numbers, Jeremiah. Is it still mathematically possible for us to win?
So Austin, yes, it is still mathematically possible for us to win, but we need to pick up. But actually, our fate is in our own hands on this. If we pick up the October 24th win versus Houston in Austin, then the October 30th match in Frisco with Austin FC versus FC Dallas will be for Copa Tejas. So Houston.
We just have to win, right? We don't have to win with goal differential or anything. It's just win both and it's ours.
If we win both, it's ours. And if we beat Houston, then the winner of that second match is the winner of Copa Tejas, which would for the teams that are currently sitting 11th, 12th, and 13th in the table, it would be kind of exciting to have an outcome that could mean something. So that's the question. Do you think that means something?
I mean, at the beginning of the season, I would have been like, yeah, that seems nice. But at this point in the season, that would be the most exciting thing to happen to this team. And with the way Austin FC's been playing and the kind of this break in the middle and being able to rest guys here and there, it seems completely possible, right? I think the roster we played on the last 2 weekends and the way we played the last 2 weekends can and should beat Houston and Dallas. Whether or not we can do that consistently, and we have some more 3-game weeks coming up, and so there'll definitely be a need for rotation. But I think a lot of the fans have sent the message, and I imagine it's been heard by this point, that don't rotate on those games because those are the only ones that matter at this point, really.
Yeah, and if anybody's listening in a position to make that happen, the other thing about that we talked about before that wasn't great is because of the recent form of teams. If we win Copa Tejas, we will probably also finish above Dallas and Houston in the table. So if you just look at like the last 3 games, Dallas has picked up 1 point, Houston's picked up 1 point, and we picked up 6. So if we're kind of in a spot where if we win both those games, we should probably also finish ahead of both of them. And we may still be in 11th. We still may be third to last, but we could also be like the first, the highest team in the table from the state.
What about overall standings for the whole league? Where are we sitting there?
So I believe that in the whole league, we're ahead of both. Yeah, because there's that awful wooden spoon thing.
Toronto and Cincinnati. Okay, so we are actually tied with Toronto on points right now.
And ahead of Cincinnati. But we've got
5 points.
Yeah. So Cincinnati, again, like we say this repeatedly, thank God we're not FC Cincinnati. And we could logically move ahead of Houston too, because we've got a game ahead. We've got a game in hand on Houston.
Correct. Yeah, 2 points behind with a game in hand, and then 3 points behind Dallas. So yeah, could very easily move up that table within the next few weeks.
Yeah, let's hope for that. And so if you want to go on the Frisco away trip, I think it's probably the last big road trip of the year for Austin FC fans. I believe that is think it's $30 for a game ticket and $35 for a game ticket plus a bus. So check out our show notes on the show or your favorite supporters group social media accounts. And also, I think the club's going to email out promotion around that to everybody to make sure that as many people as possible make it to that match on October 30th.
Absolutely. Is there anything else we want to hit before we finish up, Jeremiah?
No, let's go ahead and wrap it up because we don't have a game preview for next week.
That's right. No game next week. We mentioned this before, but we'll be doing our Wolff in versus Wolff out debate with special guest Chris Wellhausen. So tune in for that for sure. We'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to continue the conversation, come find us on Twitter at LViajero87 and JBentley_ATX. And then at Moon Tower Soccer on both Twitter and Instagram. And then visit the Striker Texas, find the best Texas soccer journalism. Is there an article you want to plug this week, Jeremiah?
Well, there are two that I want to plug. And I have another comment on Josh Wolff that I want to add to this. So the first is Mackenzie Gaines, sort of his In the Place Where It All Began article from Chris Bills about the history of Mackenzie Gaines. The second is Josh Wolff's being tired of being on the wrong side of the MLS referee calls. And also reminds me of that like magenta sweater he wore against LA Galaxy, which I don't really get, but I'm glad that we've retired that again for the very meme-worthy Verde polo that he wore for the match on Saturday. You should definitely, if you haven't seen him like running around and like kicking his legs in the air on the field on Twitter somewhere, I highly encourage you to do that.
All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. We'll be back in 1 week with a new episode of Moon Tower Soccer, where we will take a deep dive into the state of the team and the coaching situation. We're also going to preview the following home match versus Minnesota United on October 16th. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
No one is around. Muchas gracias. Bye bye.